Hello, my name is Mitchel Gundrum, and I'm a book conservator here at the Huntington. Today I'm going to show you how to repair some books from your home library, and we're going to be doing 3 techniques: a paperback repair, tissue hinge mending for hardback books, and basic paper Japanese tissue mends for torn pages. The Huntington is home to over 12 million items, including lots of rare manuscripts, rare books, prints, photographs, and ephemera. And I work with a small team of conservators over in the conservation lab to assess and treat and prepare those materials for researchers and also for exhibition for the public. We've gathered a bunch of different books from local bookstores and from my own personal collections, and it's really important, I think, to specify that as a conservator, the work that we're doing over in the conservation lab is often much more nuanced than simply deciding to do a hinge repair. We're going to start today with repairing a paperback binding from your collection using a double fan adhesive binding. The tools that we're going to be using include PVA glue, which is like a white glue or Elmer's glue, a bone folder for masking down areas that are adhered, Japanese tissue, and a brush for applying our glue. The first step is to just assess the state of your broken book. This is a pretty common scenario. The glue has failed on this binding, maybe a cover is lost, and the first step is to remove that broken binding so that we can put a fresh one on. I'm personally a fan, when the glue is this desiccated, of just pulling the pages apart one at a time, and eventually we'll end up with a fresh text block that's ready for gluing up in our new binding. Just disbinding that text block and taking that glue layer off adds a ton of space at the edge. That's just air that's suddenly been added in after you've taken the book apart. And if you want the book to fit back into its case, you're going to need to press that air out. So the first step after jogging this text block up the way that we want it to be is you'll need to put it under weight for a few hours. And I've already pressed another text block here that I'll use for that demonstration. We're going to now put our fully disbound text block into a lying press. And if you don't have a lying press at home, something as simple as some boards with clamps all around just to hold the text block stable is perfectly fine. So we're going to take our PVA here. I have a long sort of stiff bristled brush here so that things don't get too gloopy. And I'm getting that fan all the way across, just so that I have kind of a flat surface, and I'm going to get glue all the way across the edges of the leaves. And the motion is just brushing down across the surface of those leaves. And they'll kind of flap a little bit. You'll maybe see some of the pages moving, and that's totally fine because we do want a little bit of glue in between the pages, not just resting on the top. And that is the first fan of our double fan. I'm going to shift this around and do the same thing on the other side. Just applying pressure, getting that fan going in the opposite direction. So now I've got glue on each side of each leaf will hold the text block together. So that's our double fan, just giving it a little squeeze. And here I have what's going to be both our spine lining and our attachment back into our case. And this works if you're reusing the original case or if you're deciding to make some kind of artistic binding or put a new wrapper on. This step will work for all of those. So I'm using a Japanese tissue. This is about 15 grams per square meter. I've trimmed this piece to about 3/4 of an inch wider than the text block on both sides, so 1.5 inches. And it lands just shy of the height of the text block. So we don't want that showing over the edge of the text block. The wide edges will hold the original case on. Give it a little extra squeeze to make sure that everything's sitting just where I want it. And that is the double fan adhesive. In order to let it dry, all we're going to do is prop it up spine down so that the weight of the text block can add a little bit more pressure. And the way I like to do that is to just use some bricks. You can use some heavy books. And I do want the binding to be perfectly dry before I mess with any of the case reattachment. So while this dries, I have a text block here that I have already done the double fan. You can already see functions like a paperback. much happier than it was when I first got it. And the approach here is going to be to glue up these edges and stick it back into its original case. And if you decide you're going to use a new case, you could craft that at this point and re-adhere. Rather than using PVA, which is a little bit heavy-handed, I'm going to use wheat starch paste. It's a very strong adhesion and it's completely water reversible. So if you do amend and you decide that you want to try again, or you decide that you do want to take this cover off but you don't want to damage it, all you have to do is take either a brush or a water pen like this, and it softens the paste and releases it without doing any damage. And the last step is putting it back into its original case. It's something of a rite of passage for book restorators or book conservators to get all the way through this process and accidentally put the text block in upside down in their case. But do make sure that your text block is right side up when you apply it to your case. I really am just going to carefully center it, put it in place, close it, making sure I have good adhesion all the way across the spine. I'm going to use my Delrin folder, the tiny tip, to really press down those glued in areas, get out all the bubbles and the wrinkles. And there you have your repaired paperback. That paste will take a few hours to dry. You might hear a little bit of crinkling as that dry paste, first flexes. Your text block has another several decades of life back in it. So that's your double fan adhesive paperback repair. So a lot of people probably have books that look like this, where your hardcover is falling apart, you've got a break in the hinge right where the board attaches to the text block. And so what we're going to do is apply reinforcement to that inner hinge, and that'll put your book back in a state where you'll be safely able to read it and shelve it and use it. The tools we're going to use for this part of the process are simply our wheat starch paste and a brush for application, a small folder, Teflon or bone, and Japanese tissue. This tissue that we're going to use is approximately 15 grams per square meter, and there will be a link in the bottom of this video showing you where to purchase those materials. So I have here my tissue, and I'm going to cut a small strip that will bridge that gap, and I aim for maybe 3/8 or 1/2 of an inch with my thicknesses, so that spans both sides. It can get inside the gutter and just provides you with enough space to work with. I like to use, this is a pin vise or an awl, and it's sort of a cut, but also sort of a tear. This leaves just a little bit of kind of a shelf or a little bit of wispiness on the edge of my hinge. And that again allows for that sort of distribution of stress when that hinge is applied. I'm going to now trim that hinge to the height of the text block, not the height of the boards. It's going to end right at the head and the tail edge of the text. And that's going to go right in that broken area of the text. You can see right there. We want to maintain a little bit of that opening tension. And so the way we do that is actually to prop our broken board up at about 100 degrees or 110 degrees. And I'm going to grab some bag weights to sort of hold everything in place here. And now I'm going to paste up my hinge. I'm going to use my wheat starch paste that we used in the earlier demonstration. There's your pasted up hinge. And when I'm doing this, I'm sort of draping it with a bend in the middle, centering it on the text block approximately. And now I'm going to use my smooth folder to carefully make sure that's centered on the break and that I can get all the way into that hinge, into that broken gutter area, and make sure that it adheres really well. When this dries and sort of lightens up, it'll be almost an invisible repair. And you'll have a hardcover book that is, again, safe to hold and to read. If you're working on any kind of material that has torn paper, or especially things like dust jackets for hardcover books, please don't use tape. Instead, try to use some of the techniques that I'm about to show you for tissue repair, or use some kind of plastic sleeve for holding everything together until you're able to do a more comprehensive treatment. So the tools that we're going to be using are your torn paper objects, a brush with wheat starch paste, Japanese tissue, a thick blotter paper, some small bag weights to kind of hold everything flat, tweezers, makeup sponges for cleaning the paper before we apply the mends. I have a small folder for smoothing out my mends and making sure I have proper adhesion, and Remay, which is a sort of buffer layer between the drawing and the object, and it prevents things from sticking together. I've mended the spine, and I've also used a very, very thin tissue on these edges. I don't want the edges of the paper to be stronger than the actual sheet. It's going to invite people to think that the paper is stronger than it is. It's going to invite tearing on that hard edge. At the structural points, I'm using this 12, 15 gram tissue. And on the edges, I'm using this 3.5 gram Tengujo tissue, which you can see is extremely thin. It's holding everything together, making this kind of nice, almost perfectly invisible net that holds together all of the loose areas, but doesn't add kind of a laminate layer of paper on those areas. So my first step here is to just come along and carefully touch up the places that are creased. Get a sense of what's still there, what might be lost. And now before I go ahead and add any mends, I'm going to do just a little bit of surface cleaning. And I'm using these very small, these are just basic makeup sponges, being very careful of the tears to not pull anything up. And so I'm gonna go ahead now with just a very light tissue consolidation of this edge. When I'm doing this, I'm using this very light tissue and wheat starch paste. So for this paper, I often just do a tear. I'm going to only need a very sort of thin application of the paste. The tissue is so thin, if you brush out too much, you'll just end up tearing it. So I'm just adding a little bit of paste. I'm gonna use my tweezers to place that. I'm putting that tissue down exactly where I want it over these mends. And I'm going to use my smooth bone folder here to smooth everything out. And it's probably very difficult to see on camera. It's difficult for me to see, but I know that all of the fringes are down all the way across and that this whole area has been consolidated. Now I want to take any of that excess moisture right out. And I'm using these pre-cut pieces of Remay and blotter. Put that right over the top. So I have blotter, Remay, object, Remay, blotter. And I just put a little controlling weight over the top. With a mend like this, with paste, sandwiched between blotter, a regular day, anywhere from 10 minutes to half an hour, that mend will be perfectly dry. And it'll look like the ones over here, where I've smoothed everything out neatly. You can see that it's torn, you can see that it's been through it, but it's safe to handle. And you can see the mends on the inside here. I've closed up those holes and the tears so that I'll be able to remove the staples and put them back in and rebind this book once all of the pages are mended. This has been How to Repair Your Favorite Book with me, Mitchel Gundrum, at the Huntington. And the most important thing to take away from today is that these are skills that take years to hone, but you will have the tools to start breathing new life into your home library after watching and practicing some of these techniques. If you enjoyed this and you're interested in other things that we do here at the Huntington, please do like and subscribe to follow along. Visit the link in the description for links to where to buy tools, supplies, materials, and other resources that you can use to repair your home library.